Warning. The radio broadcast you're about to hear was made by men and for men. It may at times seem a little rough around the edges, brash, and certainly not canonically approved by papal authority. But its content may indeed challenge you to become the man, father, husband God has called you to be. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the latest episode of The Obligation. My name is Jason Murphy, and man, what a show we have for you today. For the first time ever, we are coming to you from the Carolina Catholic Media Studios on North Tryon Street in Charlotte, North Carolina. Gotta say, I'm a little nervous. Big surroundings, big towers, and a big guest joining us today. This week we have a lot to cover. Just coming off of the Super Bowl and celebrating the feast of St. Valentine, I thought let's go big with this one. No better guest to join us here on his own local turf. We have the host of the show Faith and Sport, Dr. John Acquaviva. Dr. John is a professor in sports science and management department at Wingate University. He's a Catholic speaker known for relating the concepts discussed in the Catechism, the Bible, and Pope John Paul II's theology of the body to a variety of topics in the world of sport, health, and fitness. He is an author of the books Improving Your Body Image Through Catholic Teaching and Raising Kids with a Healthy Body Image, a guide for Catholic parents. And if that wasn't enough, Dr. John is going to be speaking at the upcoming Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas on March 5th at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church here in Charlotte. It is my honor and privilege to welcome to The Obligation, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Brother, it's very good to see you. It's very good to be here. I'm excited. Let's get started in this chat.
Yeah, man. So glad to be here in these hallowed walls of Carolina Catholic Radio. We are here. Appreciate you coming, taking the time to be with us. So just wanted to get down to it. Tell us a little bit about your walk. What brought you to the radio sector? And I know you're a professor over there at Wingate.
That's right.
I'd like to hear how that all played out.
Got it. So, like you, I'm a cradle Catholic, and I played sports my whole youth. In fact, well into my adulthood. I played baseball in college. I had a chance to play professionally in Europe for a year. I continued to play semi-pro in the D.C. area. So sport is a big part of me. And actually, while I was doing all that in my 20s, late 20s, and all through my 30s, I played rugby as well. So sport was a really big part of my life. And one of the things that as I developed my faith, being a cradle Catholic, I was like most people, it starts making more sense the more you delve into the Mass, the meaning of the Mass, the more you delve into the Catechism, the more you delve into what does it mean to be Christian? What does it mean to be Catholic? And a few years ago, I came across this Office of the Laity that was started by John Paul II called the Office of Church and Sport. And I was like, what? What's that? Yeah. And I did a double take at it. And I went to the website immediately and I looked up what was the Office of Church and Sport. And it was literally came down to this. The Vatican, for the first time in any major religion, made official statement. And Catholicism was the first to make a official statement of something like the following. Sport is a very big part of our contemporary culture. And we must embrace it, and ultimately we must weave our faith into all aspects of life, even sport. And of course, Jason, one of the reasons I'm sitting here and we sit here and do this show, one of the reasons that I started the show Faith and Sport, one of the reasons I'm speaking at the men's conference in one of the upcoming weekends is because we all realize that our faith is literally meaningless unless we apply it once we get outside of that parking lot,
Absolutely.
Right? So many people have said things along the following. I had a hard time being Christian. I had a hard time being Catholic. When right after Mass was done or right after the service was done, people would treat each other with disrespect right in the parking lot, not to mention at the supermarket, not to mention on the airwaves, not to mention in sporting events. In fact, the unfortunate thing about sport is some of those negative things that appear in our culture, whether it's youth sport, high school sports, professional sport, at the Olympic level, some really negative things happen. Everything from coaches getting berated by parents berating one another, athletes cheating. It's all over the board. And that's why JP2 did what he did with the Office of Church and Sport.
Absolutely. I mean, sport is so important. I mean, St. Paul, one of my favorites, and that's pretty much every analogy he makes has to do with competing and running the race and winning the prize. So that's beautiful. How about kids? I know you have I say new one. Mine is almost, going over a year. We've hit over a year.
Wow.
Christmas Eve, we were at a year, and I know you're right behind me there.
That's right.
What tell us about family life, kids and...
Yep. I'm married to Alicia. Been married for 13 years come May. And we have 5 children. We had 4 right away. We had 4 within 5 years. We took a huge break of about 4 years.
Okay.
Actually, about 5 years. And then we had little Jack. We had a baby 10 months ago.
Okay.
And so we like you guys, have 5. We live in Matthews.
We're 6 now.
6,
Doc.
sorry.
You got to keep
okay,
up.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I need a calculator.
Yeah, we need to keep
carry the 1. And, okay, you guys got 6.
Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
And we are enjoying the family life. And one of the neat things about kids, among other things, right? There's a whole lot of energy that they can bring to a family situation or a house situation, but is you can, as the mom and dad, and in particular in our case, as the dad, you can share what is both good and what is something that you can pass along to them.
Yeah.
And for me, it's sport. I love sports. I engage in sports with my children and activity, everything from riding bikes through a trail system to throwing the football with my 10-year-old son, Luke. And one of the things that I have an opportunity to do, and I'm sure you think along these same ways, and I think a lot of parents think this way, I love my parents. Mm-hmm. My parents, especially under the circumstances, I think for the most part did the best what they had in front of them. But our opportunity is probably a greater awareness of what the catechism and what our church teaches. And I feel that my son's life, for instance, will be enriched, and my daughter's lives will be enriched, in part because I will frame, for instance, sport in a more concrete way to make it more meaningful to them. Because if seen through the eyes of our Lord, then everything has meaning. Yes. And the mistake we make, the non-fan looks at sport and says, that is something of paganism. And that's not true. Our popes have spoken a great deal about one of the ways that we can honor God is not just playing sport, but honoring all the rules of sport. And that's one of the things I can pass on to my son. And I'm sure that, and I say my son, the 10-year-old is my son as well, but we've yet to introduce him to anything like that except for walking at this point.
Yeah, sport is super important for me as well. Grew up, always competing. My father was just an excellent tackle in football in high school. Was offered scholarships to Naval Academy.
Awesome.
Went to Northwestern in Louisiana and played for a little while, but family life took off, and I think my mom wanted him back in Baton Rouge, so had an uncle didn't want him playing for LSU at the time. He could have gone and played at LSU.
Is that true?
Of course, yeah. But
he was that talented.
But his uncle didn't like the coach at the time.
Who was?
Oh, God.
I know. Sorry to stump you on that. I was just curious.
I'd have to go way back on that one. But didn't care for the coach, so didn't play there. Went and played somewhere else. But then he was married, young, and life took off. So introduced to football as a kid. I was kind of a smaller guy. My dad was a big tackle. Played both sides of the ball.
Wow.
MVP. All state. All this kind of thing in Louisiana. So I think around 4th, 5th grade, I realized I probably wasn't gonna keep growing like the rest of the guys. So I went to soccer, and of course played a lot of soccer up until I was probably close to 40. Ran cross country and track in high school. Just sports all around was very important to me. And I think early on, before I had kids, I was probably, I wanted my children to experience that. I wanted to, probably in a, not in the most thought out way, maybe in a more of a, just taking this, obviously the spiritual side out, but more of a, just the competition side, wanting them to be a full rounded child, but without the proper perspective, we're going to miss the mark, and so as a father with my oldest, who's now 14, began coaching him when he was probably 4. Coached for about 10 years for him, and then some of the other kids. But we started seeing just a super quick decline, even at the age of 4 and 5, playing in some of the organized soccer leagues. It just wasn't fun. And as a player who played my whole life and was very close to an amateur level player, it didn't feel good. Winning was just not it. And at that age, you just want them to be exposed. And even myself, up until that point, was still playing, and I got to the point where I wasn't even enjoying when I would win because there was so much lack of sportsmanship, and it just was missing. We're missing a lot there. So we actually transferred over to the school. St. Patrick's had a league, and I began coaching there in a little bit more balanced environment. It wasn't as super, ultra competitive as some of these club sport kind of teams were.
Right.
And it just felt better. There was more sportsmanship, and the kids were able to have fun there. And of course, we always want to win. And I'm bad. I am real bad, Doc. I hate losing more than I like winning. I'm pretty bad about that. But I think I've balanced out, with the kids, and I haven't pushed it as much on them. I want them to experience it, of course, from the right perspective, and I want them to flourish where they're planted, and use the gifts and talents. And, out of 6 kids, they're not all going to be super, athletic. Some may, and some, might not be. So I try to stay open-minded about that as well. But sport's super important.
So tell me about the difference between, you said there's a noticeable difference, a palpable difference between the St. Pat's League and then this other league that you guys came from. What was a particular example where you're like, wow, that did not happen over there, or this has happened over here where it didn't over there, something like that?
I think the amount of practice that some of these coaches were doing, which I get that. And again, going back to my point, I hate losing more than I like winning. But, I think the league itself was, really wanted you to only practice once a week. Some of the teams were practicing multiple times a week. All these set plays. When most of the 4-year-olds are out there, they just want to really understand what the ball, what the basic rules are.
That's right.
Let alone setting up and then beating kids, 7, 8, 9, 0, stuff like that.
Was it encouraged to beat them that bad? In other words, if you're up 6-0, let's try to go up 7-0.
Well, I think they've kind of changed things. I've seen in the last couple of seasons, it feels like that once they'll start peeling a player off and they'll start to try to balance things out.
Yeah.
But I've even at that level, even when they peel off, they're not trying to. And I've had very good teams. I've coached very good teams for my son, and we got to the point where I would tell the kids, I was like, if you score again, you're coming out. And the funniest time, one time, this poor boy Paulo, he was a great kid. I got to give him some mention out there. But he was a lefty, and he always played my left wing. And we were up. It was one of those games where we really, we got to the point where it was just kind of like, all right, it was maybe 6-7-0. I mean, at some point you have to let your team play, but then. And I think it's Bobby Bowden to go back in the day saying, well, he got, there was another coach he played and he was upset that they beat him so bad. And he said, well, coach, it's not my job to control the score. It's yours.
Right.
And so I get that in the college level, high school level. But, when you're talking about, your elementary school grade. So anyway, Paulo was standing there, and we were driving in, and we were passing a lot, but one of our guys took a shot, and it went off the keeper, and it kind of a hard ricochet, and it hit Paulo, and it bounced. It went off his knee and went right in the goal. And he was like, "Coach, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I was like, "It's okay, Paulo. You don't have to come out. You don't have to come out." But at least they were aware. But some of the things, just that really push at an early level, the 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds, yes, but I just don't like the spirit of that. And I'm super competitive, but at some point you got to just, kind of address that because it gets very unsportsmanlike. And the kids don't, at that age, you want them to have an appreciation of the game, and they really can't when you just get out there at that age. And some of the teams, may have not even played any of the games yet at that point.
Right.
So, but yeah, so we've moved, at this point after the pandemic, all the school leagues they haven't resumed yet. So I think we're probably in one of the other leagues. And I've stepped out kind of since pandemic. I went about a 10-year run of coaching. And I think it's kind of nice sitting on the sideline, not having to be there early, not having to stay there late, and just relax, even though I kind of have to, kind of hold myself back a little bit because I do, I want to get out there and help coach. But it's kind of nice to be able to sit there and enjoy and watch the kids too.
Right. I love, by the way, you said a lot of things there, but you speak of the pandemic as if it's completely in the past. I love that part about that story.
Yeah.
No, a whole lot to be said about what you just said for sure. In that there's a couple things that really pop out, and one of them is it can be a real negative experience. And one of the things that I'm going to do through this talk at the men's conference, what I try to do through the show, and as I mentioned, I'm writing a book on sport and virtue, right? I'm addressing all this stuff, and I'm addressing it to one chapter is going to be just for the fan, one chapter is going to be just for the player, one chapter is going to be just for the parent, and so forth, right?
That's great.
Is that we cannot change how other parents respond. We cannot change how a coaches. The only thing that we have full impact of, is how we respond to that. And we all know this, that one of the best things we can do is be the moral agent of the situation. And that sounds kind of heavy, but the fact is we can do stuff in sports related situations that calm it down, that bring perspective to it, that just brings some Christian light. And sometimes it's not doing anything. In other words, when the umpire makes a brutal call, when the referee acts as if they're refereeing without their eyes open, it's really frustrating. But one of the best things we can do is sit on our hands and remember that person's sometimes as young as 14 or 15 years old, and they're making less dollars per hour than the age they are. And we expect them to be all over the field, make all the best calls, right? And that's one of the things that we're called to do is bring our faith to the field. And it's easier to write it down. It's easier to talk about it. But the fact is, at some point, we have to practice it because that's really what's going to please God.
Great words, Doc. Bring our faith to the field. I mean, I think that can be elaborated on into bring our faith out in society and everything we do as Catholics. So we're going to take a quick break here on The Obligation, talking to Dr. John Acquaviva. We'll be right back. You know how guys are. We wait to the last minute to do anything, whether it's Christmas shopping, birthdays, anniversaries. You know how we do it. We wait to the very last minute. Well, it's coming. Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas, March 5th, 2022. St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church is just a few short weeks away. Need you to get out there and get those tickets, men. Need to see you in those seats. We have an incredible lineup, including Keith Nestor from Down to Earth Ministries. We have Dr. Ray Garunde from EWTN's own The Doctor Is In. Catholic Answers, Tim Staples, apologist, speaker, author, and our own Dr. John Acquaviva from Faith and Sport here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. Join Bishop Jugas and the priests and seminarians of the Diocese of Charlotte for a day of fellowship and prayer. Confessions will be heard all day. Gentlemen, this is a great reset. If you've pulled away, gotten lazy, need a kick in the bottom, need to get back moving in the right direction, this is what the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas is all about. Go online right now, www.catholicmenofthecarolinas.org. Use the promo code RADIO and save $5, and we will see you there. Be a better father, be a better husband, be a better Catholic, be a better man. God wills it. God bless, and Esto Vir.
Did you know that 90% of older adults wish to stay in their home as they age? Aging in place has many benefits. It tends to improve quality of life, which in return improves physical health. Also, retaining independence as we age is critically important to our mental health. Hi, my name is Meredith Stignan, and I am the president of Harmony Home Solutions and an active parishioner of St. Patrick Cathedral. We are your trusted partner for aging in place. We strive to enhance the lives of older adults and their families by providing premier aging in place and universal design lifestyle solutions that increase safety beautifully. Now is the time to get your aging in place plan in order with Harmony Home Solutions. Visit our website today at hhsclt.com. Again, that's hhsclt.com. Or give us a call at 980-220-8821. Again, that's 980-220-8821. We want to help you live an empowered and beautiful life.
And we are back here talking to Dr. John Acquaviva. Dr. John is the host of Faith and Sport here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. We've been talking about faith and virtue in sports. Just a wonderful conversation, really Dr. John mentioned, taking our faith to the field, and that can just be, brought up so many different ways, taking our faith into this world. But let's talk about radio, Doc. How did you get into radio? I mean, you were a teacher, you've written some books. How did all that play out?
I've had 2 jobs as a PhD. One was at Roanoke College, and after 8 years there, I had a calling to be in the seminary. I thought I was going to be a priest for the Diocese of Richmond. I was in the seminary for the Diocese of Richmond for 2 years, and then God kicked me out, probably similar to other people where that happens. And I really thought that's where I was supposed to be. And to this day, I know I was supposed to go. I was just never sure whether I was going to be ordained or not. Yeah. And then I took a couple year off break after seminary and taught at a community college in Northern Virginia area. And then I eventually landed here at Wingate University. And there was a gentleman there who saw me teach. In fact, he worked for the communications division at Wingate University. And his job was basically to use radio, TV, and any other means, primarily the printed word, to give exposure to Wingate University, a small private school east of here, right? And one day he was asked, let's get some prolific lecturers or professors on campus, and then let's promote the university through their lectures. And I was chosen by the provost. I was very flattered by that, because of the energy I bring to the classroom. Shortly after he videotaped me, he said, John, I think I have an idea for a show for you. And eventually he landed me a job, believe it or not, at ESPN Radio. Oh, wow. But the name of the show was called The Fitness Doctor, right? A little play on words there. Yeah. And what I did for a half hour every Saturday morning at ESPN, I'd go down to the studio. They gave us our own little studio. And I had a producer and everything. And I would talk about fitness and how it should relate, how to start a fitness program, why is weight training important, all that stuff I talk about. And then eventually I landed a gig at Radio Maria. And Radio Maria is one of the many affiliates of Catholic radio. And they have, I think it's 11 different affiliates in 5 different states, including Louisiana, New Jersey, Texas, and so forth. And that was a little convoluted how I ended up there. But I realized, Jason, after a while, it's really difficult to have an hour program every week to talk about fitness and to weave our faith into it, right? Where it wasn't directly into the conversation. So eventually I talked to the radio station manager at Radio Maria, and I said, do you mind if I change from faith and fitness to faith and sport? And he said yes immediately. And I realized after I hung up the phone with him, Jason, he thought there was no difference between the two. In other words, at Wingate University, I teach exercise science, right? I teach strength and conditioning, sports nutrition, exercise physiology, and sports like that, or classes like that. But people on campus, at least half of them, probably think I'm one of the coaches, right? Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
People, they equate being an athlete with working out. Like, why else would you work out? And I remember after I got off the phone with him, he was like, yeah, faith in sport, faith in fitness, what's the difference? But of course, it's a major difference because of this. There are so many more things and contemporary things to talk about in sport just because of this simple factor. Yeah. Sports occurs every day. There's new stories every day where there's not new research every day in the field of fitness. And if it is, shocker, working out is good for you. Right. But the thing about sports is that it allows us in so many ways to weave in our faith to it, because there's all these questions of ethics and character and morality that need to be discussed within the world of sport. And then as a result of that, on Radio Maria, I got a hold of somebody who said, we're starting a radio station here in the Carolinas called Carolina Catholic Radio. Now it's been changed to Carolina Catholic Media Network. Right. Do I have that right? Yeah. And eventually I got in touch with the president, David Papandrea, and he goes, bring yourself and your whole team over to us. And of course, the irony is, I shouldn't say, of course, the irony, but anybody who listens to our show on a regular basis, we still syndicate our show to Radio Maria. So we record here a day after they, Chris, the producer, ties that all up in a neat bow, and then he sends it off to them. And so I'm still on Radio Maria, but as Faith and Sport.
Excellent. Yeah, well, that brings us right here. So this is, it's great. I know Ed Billick, like I said, is going to be the master of ceremonies. I know he's with you a whole bunch on Faith and Sport. That's right. And you guys have a segment. I don't know if it's too early or too late in the game here,
It's the right time, Jason. Right now is the time to do it.
All right, let's do it. So Faith in Sport has this segment, hit or miss.
That's right.
And usually Carlos Rivera, is it?
Herrera.
Yep. Sorry. All right. So I put together a couple of my hit and misses from the Super Bowl this week.
That's right.
And so I wanted to give you mine. So my hit, I'll go first with the hit.
Go ahead.
My hit was an halftime ad from Squarespace, and they are a company that does websites development for blogging and e-commerce and things like that, so they can sell you a domain and all that. So Matthew McConaughey was the speaker. He was the actor in the commercial there, and he was basically in a spacesuit, and he was up in space or maybe on the moon, looking out through a ship and basically talking about the boundary of human architecture. The new frontier and Mars. And he said, I don't know about that. He kind of ho-hummed, like you'd think he'd be all excited about being out there and exploring the next frontier. But he said, it's not a time to escape. It's a time to engage. It's a time to build more trust. While others look to the metaverse and Mars, let's stay here and restore ours. The new frontier ain't rocket science. It's right here.
That's right.
And so he was speaking of terms of, bringing it down to a local level, to an earth level of this advertising, and let's focus here, let's do better here, let's do our work here. And I thought of it kind of in a larger perspective, that there is so much going on in our world, in our church, just turmoil, with everything going on. We could go, on and on about everything that's maybe going wrong in this world, but it's time, to focus on what's right here, the man in front of us. And there was I think Walker Percy, a writer from years ago, I believe one of his statements was, in a time of bad poetry, it's not a time to complain, it's a time to write good poetry. and I may be wrong on that quote, so whoever's out there here, it might not be Walker Percy.
It's appreciated either way, Jason.
But it's a great quote there, and I think that it made a lot of sense for me to look at, where we are and, not be looking and trying to escape from things, but to really head face forward right into what we have issues with, and so that's my hit. What do you think about that?
I like that. No, this is you brought up so many things that need to be discussed there, that can be discussed. And the first thing I thought of was a story, and I didn't come in here with this story, but as you said it reminded me of a story. And when I was doing my PhD at Florida State University, the local I belonged to the local parish, and where almost all of the students from Florida State University went to Mass. So needless to say, a huge university like that, there was thousands and thousands of Catholics on campus. And every year they would hold a retreat just for the college students. But I was a graduate student, so I wasn't attracted to something like that. It wasn't for me. It was for the 18 to 22-year-old that were undergrads. And I remember I was talking to the pastor after they came back, and he said, they came back, the bus took them back from the retreat center, and they were there they got there Friday night, came back Sunday afternoon, something like that. And he said, they came back to the rectory and everybody kind of went their own way. And then in the lobby of the rectory was one of the kids, one of the undergrads, just kind of sitting there. And he was reading a book or something. And Father said, are you waiting for a ride? And he goes, no, I got my own car out there. And he says, can I help you with something, son? And he goes, no, I'm good here. And he goes, you're not going to go home? And he wasn't pushing him out of the rectory, but I think he was kind of pushing him out of the rectory. And he said, I want to stay in this environment. I want to stay in this peaceful environment that I've been for the past weekend. And the priest looked at me, and he, in telling the story, he said he didn't get the purpose of the retreat. The purpose of the retreat is to, get motivated with your faith, but to bring it out to the world.
Yeah.
In other words, you can escape, and he was still trying to escape, but at some point you want to engage, and you want to engage people in your faith. You don't need to go up to him and go, why we teach the Blessed Virgin is a perpetual virgin. You don't need to go up to people like that, but you want to engage people just in truth and kindness and interesting stories and draw them into your world as you get drawn into theirs. And I thought that was a great story. I'll never forget that story because the kid wanted to stay there forever because it was so peaceful.
The Transfiguration, St. Peter wants to pitch the tents and hang out, but we got to come down the mountain and bring what our Lord has given us right into everything we do. So that was my hit. So that was my hit. Now, I do have a miss, and I'm going to preface it by saying that I was watching it with five of my kids.
Got it.
So ranging from 4 years old to 14 years old.
Got it.
And it was special. They didn't have school today. we let them stay up because they didn't have school, and usually they would have been in bed. They wouldn't be able to stay up that late. So it was a little bit special. So, of course, knowing previous history of the Super Bowl halftime shows,
That's right.
A little risque here and there, some scandal here and there. I was a little disappointed. I can't say I was surprised. Once again, the Super Bowl, it was featuring rap and hip hop. That was kind of the theme. And to be honest, as a teenager, probably heard some of that music growing up. Probably exposed to quite a bit. Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Dr. Dre. The old school West Coast rappers, and they had a lot of immodesty, of course. I mean, that's pretty typical. We know that. It's
like some of the dancers behind them, or the backup singers, whatever.
Yeah,
okay.
and then a lot of the dancers were dressed in prison uniforms, and they were dancing. So we're glorifying this criminal activity.
Right.
We had immodesty going on. We had a bunch of materialism. We had references of sex and drinking, and I gotta say my miss is the halftime show, because even prior to that, my son, the cutest thing ever, the 4-year-old, sitting there, probably not following much about anything. He's just excited he's up a little late.
Absolutely. He
says, "Dad, why?" This is Jake. I gotta give him credit. This is one of the funniest things. He says, "Dad, why do all the players have pappies? Why do they have pappies hanging out of their mouths?"
What's a pappy?
A pappy, like a pacifier.
Pacifier.
Yeah,
Got it.
and it took me a few minutes to understand what he was talking about. And I'm like, "You're right, Jake. They do." And I said,
mouthpiece.
And then of course everybody jumps in, and my wife's like, "Yeah, and look, they have to have water squeezed into their mouths. They have to get their bottles, and then they spit. They just spit everywhere." And you know what? At the end of the game, what they do? Only babies would do this: is they take the bucket and they pour it over the coach's head because they don't know how to hold their drinks. So it was great. So I say that because we had this innocence and this funniness, and then of course we have the halftime show, and that's all coming up, and I just don't know why we have to go there. I don't know why it has to be that leaning. We can go back and talk about the Janet Jackson episode where she had a wardrobe malfunction years ago, and then even the past couple of years, I mean, they had stripper poles, and the singer was dancing on the stripper pole, and it's just unfortunate because you do have, probably more times than not, you have a lot of families together, watching this thing. They're not all scattered about. Everybody kind of tends to gravitate. We're not a big football watching family. I watch some games. I watch mostly college. But for the Super Bowl, it seems like, okay, well, this is kind of the epitome of our sports. But that's what it stands for. That's basically what we're glorifying, and it's a shame. So that's my big miss right there. How do you feel about that?
No, I had a hard time with that as well. In particular, there's one story that kind of popped out for the halftime show, and that was Snoop Dogg. And here's a guy who was arrested 2 times for 2 different felonies in the previous decade and about 20 years ago. But in particular, this past week, he was accused of rape. Mm-hmm. And I will fully admit, I don't know whether he committed that rape, but nobody knows. In fact, he even tweeted something out saying, hey, everybody beware about this woman or about this in general, but they're coming after your money. And of course, that's a good way to deflect, especially if it's true, right? Like, hey, they're just coming after my money. But what I challenged the NFL on, Jason, is if that was somebody else from a different culture or race, would that have been treated in the same way? Because in this Me Too movement, it is so powerful, and it's been so powerful over the last 5 or 6 years, that if they just point their finger at somebody, whoever is backing them in a contract, in a show, whatever the case is, they pull that contract and say, under the circumstances, and to be safe in this situation, I'm pulling you. And the NFL made no statement on such a thing. The Me Too movement made no such statement on a thing. And he could be innocent in this particular deal. It's quite possible he is. But the difference is there's hypocrisy here, right? There's so many people that when somebody points the finger at them, whatever they're doing is pulled. Their radio show, their TV show, their movie, contract that they have with an endorsement or a sponsor. That's funny. That's not funny, but it's frustrating, I should say, to watch it all unfold. Or in this case, Jason, nothing unfolded. There was, in fact, the best thing you can do, and you know this from politics and from all the things in our culture, the best thing to do is say nothing, right? Because that way, Because if you bring attention to it, then people are going to go, well, why aren't you addressing this?
Right.
But if you say nothing, and you say nothing at least until after the Super Bowl, and this case is over, there's nothing that you're really held accountable for, right?
Yeah.
So that was frustrating.
Yeah, and I will. All right, so I'll save my miss here because it just popped in my head. I remember I saw something this morning that even with all of that going on for the halftime show, there was an article that mentioned that I guess Eminem and Mary J. Blige, and there may have been one other. It could have been Dr. Dre or it could have been 50 Cent. I'm not sure. I don't want to say for sure, but I know Eminem and Mary J. Blige, they have been they're sober. So they have years of sobriety.
Good.
Which I thought,
for that.
That's a saving little story there.
Absolutely.
So out of all that, we can still look for the good, and we can bring our faith to the field and respect someone who's been through that struggle and now sober. So I thought that was a good one there.
Very good.
Let's go take another quick break, and we'll be right back talking to Dr. John Acquaviva, Faith in Sport.
Twenty 2022 is bringing many new and exciting changes to our Carolina Catholic Apostolate, built to communicate how to better learn, love, and live our Catholic faith. We begin with our name change to Carolina Catholic Media. This reflects the expanded scope of Carolina Catholic Radio to include the development of our podcast, streaming, social media, YouTube, and direct marketing platforms. 2022 is a very important year for the Catholic Church. As a result, Carolina Catholic Media will feature more local news, information, and conversation to reflect what's happening now and how it impacts our local Catholic community. Throughout the year, Carolina Catholic Media will showcase our Catholic schools and homeschools, the Charlotte Diocese 50th anniversary, and the 2-year worldwide synod process that begins on the diocesan level. We encourage you to get involved, join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a donation, monthly tithe, or business sponsorship to support our mission and vision to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in our apostolate. May God bless you abundantly.
We are back to the obligation, sitting down today with Dr. John Acquaviva. We were just talking about our hit and misses from the Super Bowl, and before we move on, I wanted to kind of mention, just people probably don't put two and two together, and we talk about bringing our faith to the field. Let's talk about the Lombardi Trophy.
Right.
Vince Lombardi was a devout Catholic, born in 1913. He was a daily Mass attendee.
That's right.
Had 11 children, and was actually in the seminary for a period, just like yourself and me,
That's
trying
right.
to explore, and God had other plans. But that trophy named after Vince Lombardi, a great tribute, and a great Catholic. Have you heard? Were you aware of that?
I was aware of that, and in fact, I know a little bit about Vince Lombardi, even though he's kind of like, at least to a degree, the Michael Jordan of football coaching, right? Like, I think all people look to him, at least in the past. Certainly Bill Belichick has engraved his name in the largest on Super Bowl trophies and winning teams and so forth for the Patriots. But the first winning and winningest coach will always be Vince Lombardi, at least in the NFL. Yeah. And that is known by, I think, a lot of people, that he was faithful, and that he was a daily communicant. And one of the things I think that he not only was sorry for saying, but downright regretted saying, even though other people had said it, he was known for saying, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. And later on in life, after he was done coaching, apparently he was in an interview, and the interviewer asked him about that saying. And I think he might even have prompted the interviewer, like, hey, let's talk about this. And his response, Vince Lombardi's response to winning isn't everything, it's the only thing, he said, I wish I had never said the darn thing. And then he went on to elaborate that morals and ethics need to be involved in sport. And of course, what he means is exactly how we started this program, that sport is great. And as you mentioned, you want to win bad. And you and I would be good in chess or checkers because I want to win bad too. But the irony is, Jason, sport is only good if we both want to win. If we're playing checkers and you don't really want to win, the game's probably not over before I go, Jason, I don't want to play anymore. Yeah. If we're playing chess and you keep letting me take your rook or your bishop or your queen, I'm going to go, Jason, protect them. This is no fun if you don't really try. Now, if I do it, if I kind of run over you or you run over me in a sport, but we're both trying, that's the spirit of sport, right? Sometimes people get kind of crushed, right? Yep. And I thought it was great for him to recognize that. And like I said, I think he was sorry that he ever said it because he fully realized, even though the Office of Church and Sport, for instance, wasn't around, there was no discussion on ethics and morality as there was today back then in the 70s and 80s. But he recognized that winning isn't everything. Right. Because you don't do it at all costs. You do it at all costs. You do whatever you have to do to win. No, that's not true. You have to play within the rules. You have to respect your opponent at the same time and so forth. So I appreciate that. And as I mentioned off air, this is worth mentioning as well. His grandson, Joseph Lombardi, is the quarterback's coach for the New Orleans Saints. And to demonstrate how Vince Lombardi's faithfulness probably carried on not only through his 11 children, right? He had 11 kids, but it carried on to those kids. And this Joseph is his grandson, and he's still involved in sport. And I called him to be a guest on the show on Faith in Sport. Oh, wow. And within 60 seconds, he said something along the lines of, but I want to talk about the faith too, because he thought I was just going to talk about the New Orleans Saints or Drew Brees, who he was the coach for. And I said, no, that's what our show is all about. I was so inspired by that because I didn't tell him to talk about the faith. He goes, listen, if I'm on this show, I want to talk about the faith. So he left a legacy in more ways than just football. He left the Catholic faith with that family, and at least some of those kids passed it down. Sure. It's awesome.
Yeah, to finally, realize that statement and kind of backpedal on that and push his faith, towards the end with family gathered around and within his side and within his, ear side of him, before he passed, I'm sure he was able to convey that to his family, and what a great, legacy to leave.
That's right.
Continue, especially in the field of football.
Absolutely.
So we've got, the Super Bowl. We've also got the Olympics going on.
That's right.
Winter Olympics going on in Beijing. Watched a little bit, learned a little bit, still trying to get my head around curling. But you've been watching much sport over there with the Olympics?
I've watched a little bit. I enjoy and watch the Summer Olympics more than I do the Winter Olympics. Yeah. But it always does draw me in because regardless of where it's being held, regardless of some of the politics or the discussion that's going on that's kind of negative, when it comes down to it, as we're just talking about, I love competition, and I love to see people compete. And in these sports, even though they're kind of odd, like curling, right, and then biathlon where you ski and you shoot, kind of like the old time hunters, right? That's where they got that from. But there's all kinds of categories of sport and sport themselves that you're like, I'm not really interested in this. But sometimes it's just a good way to pass the time, right? You just kind of click it on there and go. It only happens every 4 years, right? And as much as anything, NBC does a pretty good job. Even if they're not American, they'll bring in a human interest story, right? They'll say, this is the background of this athlete. This is their family. This is something that they've overcome in life, an injury or some type of disease, whatever the case is. I've watched it a little bit, but I have stated to anybody who will listen, and even a wall, if I think it's listening to me, how disappointed I was that once again, China was granted the Olympics through the International Olympic Committee. Yeah. Because ultimately what happens, and this is simplified, Jason, but ultimately what happens is everybody puts their name in the hat. Like when the International Olympic Committee says, who wants to host in this year? This is the Summer Olympics of this year. This is the winter. And people put their name in the hat. And then they go visit those sites and they listen to their bid, how they're going to make it different from past ones, how they're going to make it good, whatever the case is. It's shocking to me of all the human rights violations and this isn't just hearsay. There are many reports. There's videotape, there's photographs of human rights violations in Beijing and throughout China. And they got granted the Summer Olympics in 2008 and then now again in 2022. And it befuddles me. It's so mysterious to me on how they were granted that in this, as we were talking about before the break, in this day and age of oversensitivity to people saying stuff wrong. Heck, somebody says the wrong word on the air, people want to see them off radio or TV for a decade.
Yeah.
And then there's all these human rights violations occurring right in places like China. And then on top of it, not only are those human rights not stopped, those violations still take place. They're still taking place now. They get granted the Olympics in no better way. And I mean this, brother. Few ways in the world, throughout all the countries, is there a better kind of like virtue signaling than to be granted the Olympics? In other words,
absolutely,
you validate China every time you give them, and it confuses me to no end. And I've talked about this on Faith in Sport, even starting in the summer when I said that, coming up is the Olympics and so forth. And Ed and I would talk about this. Special guest Carlos Herrera and I would talk about this. And we would both kind of, as we're sitting here now, our shoulders would shrug and go, how does this even happen?
Yeah.
But we know why
it's the
happens.
epitome. It's the epitome of sport, right? I mean, it should be the highest virtue and the best of the best elite athletes.
That's right.
And of course, the moral side of it, unfortunately, and even in our hosts, it's boggling, mind-boggling.
It is, brother. And here's one of the things, and this is where they just simply, they have the check in front of them. And we've all done this with money, right? The check gets in front of you. This person over here is maybe more virtuous or better for you, whatever the case is. But if somebody gives you more money to do your roof or to do your side, whatever the case is, you're like, well, that speaks a lot. I'll take you. And then sometimes you're sorry for that, right? And I'm kind of being vague on the analogy. But the bottom line is this. The International Olympic Committee, they had an opportunity. And they missed the opportunity both times to go, listen, we'll consider, but we need total transparency on how you treat, for instance, those Muslims in that certain part of the country.
Yeah.
It's thought that there are hundreds of thousands of them that are imprisoned just because they're a Muslim. They didn't do anything wrong, as all reports state that. And here we are watching the Olympics, and further, by you and I watching, by the United States watching, we validate, yet again, China. And it's a shame. It's frustrating.
I mean, even a step further, I just wonder with our political relationship with China, with everything going on, how much of that gets affected, by the politicians too.
Right.
And a lot of strings get pulled, a lot of money gets moved, and that's just unfortunate. But I mean, it's kind of ruling the day these days.
It is. And we want, though, you and I want, when you're the little guy, you just want to see the big guy do the right thing.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is, Jason, a lot of times the big guy does do the right thing. But let's face it, that doesn't make the press because that's what we're expected to do.
True.
You're expected to do the right thing. You're expected to make the right decision. You're expected not to late hit the guy in football. You're expected to not berate the coach. But if you do, that's what makes the headlines, right?
Sensationalism sells, yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. Wow, we have been around the world and back, Doc. We have covered a lot of ground and probably have a whole bunch more ground to cover, but it was wonderful sitting down here talking to you, especially in these hallowed walls, like I said before, Carolina Catholic Media, the studio. You're going to be back, we're going to hear, Faith in Sport's going to be back here, right?
That's right.
In a couple weeks, new episode.
That's right. In fact, over the last couple of months, we've just been running the rebroadcast. So it's been some people that we've had in the winter or the fall, but starting in later on this month, we're going to have new episodes up at least every other week.
That's awesome. Can't wait. Looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. John Acquaviva, it's a pleasure sitting down with you and look forward to seeing you speaking at the Catholic Men's Conference, the Carolinas, coming up on March 5th, St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church. Join myself, Dr. John. We're going to have Dr. Ray Garundi, Tim Staples from Catholic Answers, Keith Nestor. He was 20 years evangelical minister who was converted to Catholicism, and he is on fire and ready to set you on fire. Bishop Jugas will be there, seminarians and priests throughout the diocese, Mass, Rosary, Adoration. You won't want to miss this day. Go online now, www.catholicmenofthecarolinas.org, and use the promo code RADIO. Save $5. It's coming up quick, guys. Go get it. Dr. John, a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Jason. And we'll see everybody at the men's conference.
Amen.
Amen.
If you enjoyed this program and like to hear more of it, make sure to go online and check us out at www.carolinacatholicradio.org. click that donate button and we'd greatly appreciate it. There are also many opportunities to sponsor the show, the radio station, and the Catholic Men's Conference. Join Sensus Fidelium, Harmony Home Solutions, and Wallach Investments, who have pledged their funds to help keep Catholic radio on the air and relevant. Sensus Fidelium is a collection of Catholic homilies, apologetic videos, and other resources to grow in one true faith. They can be found online at www.sensusfidelium.com. Wallach Investment, LLC is a strategic moral investing firm committed to placing their clients' interests ahead of their own. Their mission is to be a force of good in their relationships to make the most of their clients' investment, giving them the time and confidence to pursue their mission. Contact Daniel Wallach at www.wallachinvestments.com for more information. Make sure to check out all of the Carolina Catholic Media Network content at www.carolinacatholicradio.org. Our station provides some of the most local content than any other Catholic radio network in the United States. I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. For the Obligation Radio Show, the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas, and the Carolina Media Network, my name is Jason Murphy. God bless, and Esto Vida.